I am Jessica Wilson, 34 years old, and driving to my parents' house always feels like time travel. Each mile closer to home shrinks me smaller despite the empire I built. Today, Christmas Day, I clutch the steering wheel tighter, expensive gifts piled in my back seat. This year will be different. This year, they will finally see me. I never imagined their oversight would be so literal, or that their cruelty would give me the perfect moment to unveil my success. If you are watching this, where are you spending your holidays? Drop a comment below, hit subscribe, and stay for a family dinner you will not forget. Growing up as the middle child in the Wilson family was like being the invisible ink in a story everyone else was writing. My mother, Catherine, always said middle children were the easiest because they learned to take care of themselves. What she really meant was I had learned not to ask for anything. From my earliest memories, our family had clear roles. Michael, my older brother by 4 years, was the golden child, the firstborn son who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Every achievement of his was celebrated with dinner parties and expensive gifts. His good grades, sports trophies, and later his business degree from an Ivy League school that my parents fully funded were the stuff of family legend. Then there was Emily, my younger sister by 5 years. The baby of the family, delicate and pretty with her blonde curls and big blue eyes. Emily was spoiled from day one. My mother dressed her in designer clothes, even as a toddler enrolled her in dance classes, pageants, and never missed a recital. When Emily decided halfway through college that she wanted to switch majors for the 3rd time, my parents simply wrote another check. And then there was me, Jessica, perpetually caught in the middle. Not as accomplished as Michael, not as charming as Emily. I was the responsible one, the steady one, the one who was expected to figure things out on my own. Jessica has always been so independent, my mother would tell her friends at church, as if my self-sufficiency was a personality trait rather than a survival skill I had developed in a household where attention was a limited resource, rarely received. My father, Thomas, was not unkind, just passive. He followed my mother's lead in all family matters, including which child deserved attention. He worked long hours as a corporate attorney, coming home late most evenings. Our interactions were limited to him asking about my grades and nodding with mild approval when I reported straight A's. I remember my 16th birthday. Michael had received a car on his 16th, a brand new Ford Mustang that he proceeded to crash within 3 months. When my birthday came around, I received a card with $50 and a pat on the head. "We know you are saving for college," my mother had said. When I pointed out that Michael had gotten a car, she simply replied, "Michael needed more help with transportation. You are so good at taking the bus." Emily, of course, received a BMW on her 16th birthday 3 years later. Christmas was always the most difficult time. Each year, I would watch as Michael and Emily opened piles of carefully selected gifts while I received practical items that signaled how little my parents knew about me. One year, it was a blender because you will need it someday when you have your own place. I was 14. Another year, it was a gift card to a clothing store I had mentioned once that I disliked. By the time I reached college age, I had stopped expecting equal treatment. When my parents announced they could only afford to fully pay for Michael and Emily because college is so expensive now, I did not argue. Instead, I applied for every scholarship I could find, worked 20 hours a week waiting tables, while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, and graduated with minimal debt through sheer determination. While Michael landed a corporate job through my father's connections and Emily floated through her extended college years, I was building something on my own. I had always had an aptitude for technology, teaching myself coding in high school because the computer science teacher had declared me too advanced for his class, but offered no alternatives. During my junior year of college, I developed a software application that streamlined inventory management for small businesses. It started as a project for a local bookstore owner who complained about their outdated systems. Within a year, I had 10 clients. By graduation, I had incorporated my business, Wilson Tech Solutions, and hired 3 employees. Of course, none of this registered with my family. At holiday gatherings, conversation revolved around Michael's corporate climbing and Emily's social life. When I tried to share news about my growing company, my mother would nod distractedly before turning to ask Emily about her latest boyfriend or Michael about his golf game with the company executives. Technology is so boring to talk about at dinner. Jessica, my mother once said when I tried to explain a major contract I had just secured. Not everyone understands all that computer talk. Yet when Michael discussed his company's stock options or market projections, everyone at the table listened attentively. I stopped sharing my professional achievements with them after a while. They assumed I worked some mid-level tech job and I let them believe it. What was the point in correcting them when they had never shown interest in my actual life? Over the years, my company grew exponentially. What had started as a simple inventory system evolved into a comprehensive business management platform. By my 30th birthday, Wilson Tech Solutions had offices in 3 cities, over 200 employees, and a valuation that would have shocked my family had they bothered to Google my name. I bought my first apartment with cash, then a penthouse in the city, then a beach house in the Hamptons. I started a foundation to provide technology education to underprivileged girls. I was featured in business magazines and invited to speak at conferences. And still, when I went home for holidays, I was just Jessica, the middle child, who had done okay for herself but nothing worth discussing at length. Last Christmas, my mother had commented on my designer handbag with surprise. "That looks expensive. Is it real?" When I confirmed it was, she simply said, "Well, I hope you are not spending beyond your means just to keep up appearances." It never occurred to her that I could easily afford it. In her mind, I was still the middle child who needed to be reminded to be practical. This year would be different, though. Not because I planned to announce my success, but because circumstances would force their eyes open in a way my words never could. The snow was falling lightly as I pulled my Tesla into my parents' driveway in Greenwich, Connecticut. Their Tudor-style home looked like something from a Christmas card with professionally installed lights outlining every architectural feature and an enormous wreath on the front door. My father had done well as a corporate attorney, and my mother had always ensured their home reflected their status. I checked my appearance one last time in the rearview mirror. My hair was styled in loose waves, my makeup understated but flawless. I wore a simple but obviously expensive black dress with a single strand of pearls. Subtle elegance that spoke of success without trying too hard. The diamond studs in my ears had cost more than my father's first car. Not that anyone would notice such details in my family. From the back seat, I gathered the gifts I had brought. For my father, a rare first edition of his favorite author's work that had taken months to track down. For my mother, a handcrafted cashmere shawl from a boutique in Milan I had visited during a business trip. For Michael, a limited edition watch from a Swiss designer he had mentioned admiring. For Emily, a pair of sapphire earrings that would complement her engagement ring. For various aunts, uncles, and cousins, I had selected equally thoughtful gifts, each wrapped in heavyweight paper with satin ribbons. I also carried a bottle of Chateau Margaux, a vintage that cost more than most people spend on a month's rent. My father fancied himself a wine connoisseur, though his knowledge was superficial at best. Balancing all these items, I made my way to the front door and rang the bell. After a moment, my mother Catherine opened it, her eyes widening slightly at the pile of packages in my arms. "Jessica, you are 15 minutes late," she said by way of greeting, not offering to help with the packages. "Everyone else is already here." "Sorry, Mom. Traffic was heavier than I expected," I replied, stepping into the foyer and setting down my burden carefully. "Merry Christmas to you, too." My mother was immaculately dressed in a red cashmere sweater and black slacks, her blonde hair, now assisted by regular salon visits, perfectly coiffed. At 62, she still maintained the slim figure and upright posture of the former beauty queen. She was a title she had made sure Emily competed for as well. "Your father is in the living room with your brother. Emily and Brad just arrived too," she said, already turning away. Put your coat in the closet and come join us. Dinner will be at 6. I hung up my coat and gathered the wine and gifts following the sound of voices to the living room. The space was decorated with the same precision as the exterior, a massive Douglas fir taking center stage dripping with crystal ornaments and white lights. Beneath it, wrapped packages were stacked neatly, color coordinated in silver and blue. My father sat in his leather armchair nursing what looked like scotch, while Michael stood by the fireplace gesturing animatedly about something. Emily sat on the sofa next to a tall, sandy-haired man I recognized as Brad Sullivan, her fiancé of 3 months. Various extended family members filled the remaining seats, aunts, uncles, and a few cousins who lived nearby. "Here she is," my father called out, the first to notice me. He stood drink still in hand and gave me a brief one-armed hug. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." Thomas Wilson had aged well, his dark hair now salted with gray at the temples, giving him a distinguished look that served him well in the courtroom. His affection, while genuine, had always been reserved, especially with me. "Merry Christmas, Dad," I said, offering him the wine bottle. "I thought you might enjoy this with dinner." He examined the label, his eyebrows raising slightly. "This is quite a bottle, Jessica. Special occasion." "Christmas with family is always special," I replied with a smile. Michael approached next, giving me a hearty pat on the shoulder. "Little sis, looking good." Still working at that tech company my brother had filled out since his college days, his tailored suit, doing little to hide the beginnings of a paunch that spoke of too many business dinners and not enough time at the gym he was always talking about joining. Before I could correct his assumption about my employment status, Emily bounced over, practically shoving her left hand in my face. "Jessica, have you seen my ring yet? In person, I mean. I posted it on Instagram, but the photos do not do it justice." The diamond on her finger was indeed impressive, at least 3 carats set in platinum with smaller stones flanking it. Brad Sullivan came from money, old money, the kind that made even my success seem nouveau rich by comparison. "It's beautiful, Emily," I said sincerely. "Congratulations again to both of you." I nodded to Brad, who gave me a polite but distant smile. We had met only twice before at family gatherings, and he had never shown much interest in getting to know me. "We are thinking June for the wedding," Emily continued, twirling a lock of her blonde hair around her finger, a habit from childhood she had never outgrown, "at the Sullivan estate in the Hamptons. It will be featured in Modern Bride. Can you believe it? Daddy already promised to cover the flowers and the band. Mom is coming with me to Paris in February to look at dresses." "That sounds wonderful," I said, trying to match her enthusiasm. At 29, Emily was still treated like the baby of the family, her every wish indulged. "I brought some gifts to put under the tree." "Oh, just add them to the pile," my mother said, appearing at my elbow. "We are doing the exchange after dinner as usual. Come say hello to your Aunt Judith and Uncle Harold. They were just asking about you." This was unlikely, as Aunt Judith had never shown particular interest in my life, but I followed my mother obediently to where her sister sat with her husband on the love seat. After exchanging pleasantries and deflecting questions about my social life, a thinly veiled inquiry about my perpetually single status, I excused myself to arrange my gifts under the tree. As I knelt by the Christmas tree, I noticed something odd. Each package under the tree had a name tag, and as I scanned them, I saw tags for every family member: Michael, Emily, Brad, Mom, Dad, Aunt Judith, Uncle Harold, Cousin Stephen, Cousin Diana. Even the family's newest additions by marriage had tags with their names clearly written. But there were no packages with my name. I told myself it was an oversight. Perhaps my gifts were in another location or wrapped in different paper. It would be ridiculous to think my family had simply not gotten me anything at all. As I arranged my gifts among the others, I overheard my mother speaking to Aunt Judith in hushed tones near the drink cart. "We did not bother this year," my mother was saying. "She would not notice anyway, always wrapped up in that job of hers." Besides, what do you get someone who never appreciates what you choose? Still, Catherine Aunt Judith replied it might look odd to the others. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Jessica will understand. She is the practical one after all. I pretended not to have heard finishing my task, with slightly trembling hands, before rising to join a conversation between my father and uncle about recent tax law changes. Throughout it all, I maintained my composure, smiling and nodding at appropriate intervals, while a hollow feeling expanded in my chest. They had forgotten me on purpose, not an oversight, but a deliberate exclusion. When the dinner announcement came, I followed the family into the dining room with a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching the scene unfold from somewhere outside myself. The Wilson family dining room looked like it had been staged for a Christmas edition of Architectural Digest. The long mahogany table gleamed under the light of the crystal chandelier, set with my mother's best china sterling silver flatware and Waterford crystal goblets. A centerpiece of red roses, white lilies, and evergreen branches ran down the middle, interspersed with silver candelabras holding red tapered candles. Name cards and calligraphy marked each place setting. I found mine between Cousin Stephen and Uncle Harold, about as far from the host positions at the ends of the table as possible. My mother sat at one end, my father at the other, with Michael and Emily in the honored positions closest to them. Brad, as Emily's fiancé, was seated beside her, while Michael's latest girlfriend, Heather, a willowy redhead who worked in his marketing department, sat beside him. The dining room was warm from the heat of the candles and the bodies of 14 family members packed around the table. The scent of roasted meat, herbs, and pine from the decorative garlands created a sensory backdrop that should have been comforting, but instead made me feel slightly nauseated. My father's carving of the massive roast beef was treated with the reverence of a sacred ritual. Everyone watched in appreciative silence as he sliced the perfectly medium rare meat onto a serving platter that my mother then passed around the table. "Michael, tell everyone about your promotion," my mother prompted as soon as everyone had been served and the wine, my Chateau Margaux, had been poured. She beamed at my brother with undisguised pride. Michael sat up straighter, clearly pleased to be the center of attention. "Well, as of January 1st, I will be the youngest vice president of operations the company has ever had. Comes with a corner office company car and a substantial raise." He grinned, raising his glass. "Plus stock options that should perform very well now that I am helping steer the ship." Congratulations erupted from around the table. My father proposed a toast to Michael's success, and everyone drank enthusiastically. "That is fantastic news, son," Uncle Harold boomed, "following in your father's footsteps, climbing that corporate ladder." "The Sullivan Group has been looking for someone with your expertise," Brad interjected, nodding at Michael. "If you ever decide to make a change, you should give my father a call." "I might just do that," Michael replied, clearly flattered by the attention from his future brother-in-law. I took a sip of wine and caught my mother's eye from across the table. "This wine is excellent, Jessica," she said, raising her glass slightly. "A bit extravagant, but quite nice." Before I could respond, Emily jumped in. "Speaking of extravagant, wait until you all hear about the wedding plans. The Sullivan estate has the most gorgeous view of the ocean, and we are having a tent set up on the lawn for the reception. White roses everywhere, a 16-piece orchestra, and the cake is being designed by that baker who did Chelsea Clinton's wedding." The conversation immediately shifted to Emily's wedding plans, with my mother asking detailed questions about the guest list, the menu, and the dress shopping trip to Paris they had planned. "Jessica," Aunt Judith said during a brief lull, "what have you been up to lately? Still at that computer job?" This was my opening, a chance to share some of my own news. "Actually, I own the company now. We recently expanded to the West Coast and have been growing rapidly. Just last month, we closed a major deal with—" "Emily, have you decided on your bridesmaids' dresses yet?" my mother interrupted, not even pretending to have been listening to me. "I was thinking that shade of blue we saw in the magazine might be perfect for a June wedding." I fell silent, my sentence hanging unfinished in the air. No one seemed to notice or care. Cousin Stephen gave me an awkward pat on the arm before turning his attention back to the wedding discussion. Throughout the meal, this pattern repeated itself. Every time I tried to join the conversation, I was either talked over, interrupted, or acknowledged so briefly that it was clear no one was actually interested in what I had to say. Michael dominated one half of the dinner, with stories about his corporate triumphs, each tale painting him as the hero who saved the day with his business acumen. Emily controlled the other half with increasingly elaborate wedding details, each more extravagant than the last. "We are looking at having the rehearsal dinner on a yacht," she announced as the dessert. A traditional Christmas pudding was being served. "Brad's parents know people who know people." She giggled, twirling her engagement ring, so the diamond caught the light. "Just make sure you do not get seasick," Michael teased. "Remember that fishing trip when you were 12 green around the gills after 10 minutes? Everyone laughed at this, and Emily made a face at our brother. "That was ages ago. Besides, the yacht is huge. Brad says it is like a floating luxury hotel." "Speaking of hotels," I said, seeing another opportunity, "I recently stayed at this amazing place in Tokyo while meeting with potential investors. The technology integration there is years ahead of what we see here, and it gave me some ideas for new products that could revolutionize." "Jessica always did love those computer gadgets," my father said, with a chuckle cutting me off mid-sentence. "Even as a little girl. Remember that Christmas she asked for a computer instead of dolls." He shook his head as if this had been an amusing quirk rather than a genuine interest. "And now she works with them all day," my mother added with a dismissive wave of her hand. "Though I still think it would be good for you to consider something with more stability, Jessica. Those tech startups are so unpredictable." I bit back the urge to point out that my startup was now valued at over $50 million and employed hundreds of people. Instead, I simply smiled and took another sip of wine. "You know who you should talk to, Jessica?" Michael said, pointing his fork at me. "Heather has a friend in human resources at my company. They are always looking for people with tech backgrounds. Not as exciting as a startup, but great benefits and job security." Heather nodded enthusiastically. "I could totally put in a word for you. The IT department is expanding next quarter." The assumption that I would or should want to work in IT at my brother's company was so far removed from my reality that I almost laughed. Instead, I thanked them politely for thinking of me. "It is always good to have a backup plan," my mother said sagely, as if offering profound wisdom. "Especially at your age, Jessica. You do not want to find yourself starting over in your 40s. The reference to my age 34 and my mother's perpetual concern about my biological clock was not subtle. Before she could transition to her usual questions about my dating life, I excused myself to use the restroom. In the hallway powder room, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at me ran a multi-million-dollar company, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees, and had been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 40 list. Yet in this house, I was still just Jessica, the overlooked middle child, whose achievements were incomprehensible to her family, and therefore dismissed. For a brief moment, I considered leaving. I could make an excuse about a work emergency, drive back to my penthouse in the city, and spend the evening with a good book and a better bottle of wine than the one my family was currently enjoying without appreciating. But something kept me there. A combination of morbid curiosity about how the gift exchange would play out, and a deep-seated desire, however irrational, for my family to finally see me for who I had become. I returned to the dining room just as my mother was suggesting everyone move to the living room for coffee and the gift exchange. With a deep breath, I followed the procession, wondering what the next hour would bring. The Wilson family Christmas gift exchange had followed the same routine for as long as I could remember. Everyone would gather in the living room, my father would put on Bing Crosby's White Christmas album, and my mother would distribute presents one by one so that each person could open their gifts while everyone watched. As a child, this had been torture, sitting through the slow unwrapping of countless adult presents, small household items and clothing that held no interest for me, all while vibrating with excitement to open my own gifts. Of course, Michael and Emily had always received the most presents, the most expensive presents, and the most enthusiastic reactions to their presents. My pile was invariably smaller, my gifts more practical than fun, and the reactions to my delight or disappointment more muted. "Everyone find a seat," my mother directed as we filed into the living room. "Thomas, put on the music, please." My father dutifully went to the sound system, and soon Bing Crosby's smooth voice filled the room, singing about treetops glistening and children listening. The irony was not lost on me. I took a seat on the ottoman near the edge of the room, leaving the prime sofa and armchair spots for others. The Christmas tree lights twinkled, highlighting the abundance of silver and blue packages beneath. My own contributions, wrapped in cream-colored paper with gold ribbons, stood out slightly from my mother's coordinated color scheme. "All right," my mother said once everyone was settled with coffee cups or after-dinner drinks. "Let's begin. Thomas, would you do the honors?" My father knelt by the tree, his knees cracking slightly with the effort, and began selecting packages. "This one is for Michael from Mom and Dad," he announced, handing a large, heavy-looking box to my brother. Michael tore into the wrapping with the same enthusiasm he had shown as a child. Inside was a custom-engraved set of golf clubs, clearly expensive and specially ordered. "Wow! The Callaway Apex Pro set. These are amazing," Michael exclaimed, examining one of the clubs with reverence. "Must have been on a waiting list for months." "Only the best for our boy," my father said proudly. "Especially now with the promotion. You will need to look the part on the company golf outings." Next came a package for Emily, also from our parents. Inside was a delicate jewelry box containing a diamond tennis bracelet that matched her engagement ring. "Oh my God," she squealed immediately, putting it on and thrusting her wrist out for everyone to admire. "It's perfect. It matches my ring exactly." "We thought you could wear it for the engagement photos," my mother said, beaming. "The photographer is booked for January 15th, by the way. I put it on your calendar." The gift distribution continued in this fashion. Brad received an expensive leather briefcase from my parents to welcome him to the family. Aunt Judith and Uncle Harold opened a gift certificate for a weekend at a luxury spa resort. Cousins Stephen and Diana received various items that showed careful consideration of their interests and tastes. Each time my father approached the tree, I felt a small surge of anticipation, wondering if this time he would select a package with my name on it. And each time he chose something for someone else. Michael received a cashmere sweater from Aunt Judith and Uncle Harold, a subscription to a premium whiskey service from Cousin Stephen, and a set of monogrammed whiskey stones from Cousin Diana. When he opened my gift, the limited edition watch, he seemed genuinely impressed. "This is seriously nice, Jessica," he said, examining the timepiece. "Must have set you back a bit. Thanks, sis." Emily was equally delighted with the sapphire earrings I had given her. "These will be perfect for something blue at the wedding," she exclaimed immediately, trying them on and admiring her reflection in her compact mirror. My parents opened their gifts from Michael and Emily, exclaiming over a digital photo frame preloaded with family pictures excluding most of me, I noticed, and a gift certificate for dinner at an exclusive restaurant. When they opened my gifts, there was a moment of genuine appreciation. My father carefully examined the first edition book, running his fingers over the leather binding with clear admiration. "This is quite special, Jessica," he said, and for a moment I saw sincere gratitude in his eyes. "How did you find it?" "I have a client who specializes in rare books," I explained, not mentioning that this client was actually a company I had invested in as a silent partner. When I mentioned your interest, he helped me track it down. My mother wrapped the cashmere shawl around her shoulders, admiring the subtle pattern woven into the fabric. "The quality is lovely," she admitted. though I am not sure where I will wear something so fancy. Maybe to the opera or to Emily's rehearsal dinner, I suggested. It's versatile but special. She nodded, folding it carefully and placing it back in its box. Thank you, Jessica. It's very thoughtful. One by one, each person in the room opened their gifts, including the ones I had brought. Exclamations of delight, thanks, and appreciation filled the air as wrapping paper piled up and the stash under the tree dwindled. And still, no package with my name appeared. I watched as my father distributed the final few gifts. A small package for Heather from Michael, a gift card for the housekeeper who had been with my parents for years but was not present at the gathering, a box of expensive chocolates for Brad's parents who would be visiting the next day. When the last present had been handed out and opened, a strange silence fell over the room. It lasted only a moment before conversation resumed, but it was clear that everyone had noticed the same thing. Jessica had not received a single gift. I sat perfectly still, my face composed into a pleasant expression that revealed nothing of the hurt and anger churning inside me. Years of being overlooked had prepared me for disappointment, but this level of exclusion was unprecedented even for my family. Emily was the first to notice, or at least the first to speak up. Wait, she said, looking around at the discarded wrapping paper. Did Jessica not get anything? All eyes turned to me, and I felt heat rising in my cheeks, despite my best efforts to remain impassive. My mother let out a small, uncomfortable laugh. Oh, I just realized. Goodness, with all the wedding planning and Michael's promotion celebration we must have. She trailed off, looking to my father for help. My father cleared his throat, clearly embarrassed. Jessica, I am afraid we got a bit distracted this year. We did not mean to. Oh, we forgot you. My mother finally blurted out, her laugh high and strained. The room grew uncomfortably quiet as everyone processed what had just happened. I sat there surrounded by family members who suddenly could not meet my eyes. The only sound was Bing Crosby still crooning about white Christmases in the background, the cheerful melody now feeling like a cruel joke. It's fine, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. Really, it's not a big deal. But it was a big deal. It was 34 years of being an afterthought condensed into one unmistakable moment. There was no plausible deniability here. No way to pretend this was anything other than what it was. I had been deliberately excluded. We have been so busy with Michael's promotion and Emily's wedding. My mother continued, her voice taking on that familiar defensive tone I had heard countless times throughout my childhood. You know how hectic things get around the holidays. Yet somehow they had remembered everyone else. Even Heather, whom Michael had been dating for all of 3 months, had received a gift. The housekeeper, who was not even present, had a package under the tree. But not me, their own daughter. I understand, I said, the words feeling like glass in my throat. You had a lot going on. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Hey, you can share my golf clubs, Jess, he joked weakly. Though you never did have much of a swing. No one laughed. The attempt at humor only highlighted the awkwardness of the situation. We will make it up to you, my father promised, his face flushed with embarrassment. Perhaps a gift card? Or... No, really, I interrupted, forcing a smile. It's fine. I don't need anything. Emily was looking at me with something like pity in her eyes, twisting her new bracelet around her wrist. We could go shopping together after Christmas, she offered. My treat. The pity was somehow worse than the exclusion. I had built a life where I could buy anything I wanted, but what I could not purchase was my family's genuine interest or respect. Excuse me for a moment, I said, standing up and smoothing down my dress. I just need to use the restroom. I walked out of the living room with measured steps, maintaining my dignity until I was out of sight. Rather than going to the powder room off the hallway, I continued to the back of the house, where my old bedroom had been converted into a guest room years ago. all traces of my childhood removed and replaced with generic beige decor. Closing the door behind me, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the mask slip. My hands were shaking, and I pressed them against my eyes, determined not to cry. I was Jessica Wilson, CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, not a child who could be hurt by something as trivial as Christmas presents. Except it was not trivial. It was a physical manifestation of how invisible I had always been to my own family. I thought back to countless similar moments throughout my life. The piano recital my parents missed because Michael had a football game the same day. The high school graduation party that was scaled down because college is expensive and we need to save for Emily. The college acceptance letters I opened alone because no one was interested in hearing which schools had said yes. Even my business successes had been met with indifference. When I secured my first major client, my mother had responded to the news by asking if I was eating enough vegetables. When I purchased my first apartment, my father had cautioned me about taking on too much debt, unable to believe I could afford it outright. When I was featured in that business magazine, the issue had sat unopened on their coffee table for months. My phone buzzed in my purse, pulling me from these painful memories. It was a text from Diane, my chief operating officer, and one of my closest friends. "How's the family Christmas going? Need an extraction plan yet?" I almost laughed at the timing. Diane knew all about my family dynamics, having listened to my stories over late-night work sessions and countless dinners. Another text followed the Tokyo deal, just close champagne when you're back in the city. Also, everyone loved their holiday bonuses. You're trending on the company's Slack channel with lots of heart emojis. I stared at the message, the contrast between my professional life and personal life, stark and revealing. In one world, I was valued, respected, even admired. In the other, I was an afterthought. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of seeking approval from people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it suddenly seemed like a waste of precious energy. I had built an empire while they were not watching. I had created a life filled with purpose, achievement, and genuine connections with people who saw my worth. Why was I still playing small in this house? I texted Diane back, "Family Christmas, exactly as expected. We'll tell you all tomorrow. Congratulations on Tokyo. So proud of our team." Then I stood up, checked my appearance in the mirror, reapplied my lipstick, and made a decision. I would not slink away, hurt. I would not pretend this exclusion did not matter. Instead, I would use this moment to finally be seen. With renewed determination, I returned to the living room, where an awkward conversation about New Year's resolutions had started. In my absence, a transparent attempt to move past the gift exchange debacle. "Sorry about that," I said pleasantly, as I retook my seat. "I just needed to check something." My mother looked relieved that I had returned and appeared composed. "We were just discussing New Year's plans. Michael and Heather are going to Aspen with some friends from his firm." "Sounds wonderful," I replied, my voice steady. "Actually, I have something I would like to share with everyone, if that is okay." All eyes turned to me, curiosity mixed with lingering discomfort on their faces. "Of course, dear," my father said, clearly eager to move past the earlier awkwardness. "What is it?" I smiled, reached for my purse, and took out my phone. "You asked what I got for Christmas this year. I thought I might show you." "I got myself a few things this year," I said, keeping my voice casual as I opened the photo gallery on my phone. "I would like to show you if you are interested." Curiosity flickered across the faces around me. My mother looked wary, as if expecting me to reveal something embarrassing or inappropriate. My father merely looked relieved that I was taking their oversight in stride. "Of course we are interested," Emily said, a touch too enthusiastically. "Show us what you got yourself." I pulled up the first photo and turned my phone screen toward them. "This is the first thing. It was actually finalized just last week." The image showed a sleek, modern glass and steel building in downtown Seattle, 15 stories of architectural brilliance with Wilson Tech Solutions emblazoned across the top in illuminated letters. The building had cost $37 million and would serve as our West Coast headquarters. "That is a nice building," my father commented, squinting at the screen. "Is that where you work now?" In a manner of speaking, I replied, "This is the new West Coast headquarters for my company. We just purchased it outright last week." Confusion crossed his face. "Your company, I thought you worked for a tech firm." "I own the tech firm, Dad. Wilson Tech Solutions. I founded it during my junior year of college. That is my name on the building." A beat of silence followed as this information sank in. "You own a whole building?" Michael asked, his tone somewhere between disbelief and dawning realization. "Actually, we own 3 buildings now. This is just the newest acquisition." I swiped to the next photo, showing our East Coast headquarters in Manhattan. "This is our main office in New York. We have over 200 employees here." My mother had gone very still, her coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips. 200 employees, she repeated. 278 as of last week, I corrected gently. Plus another 120 in Chicago, and we will be adding about 200 more with the Seattle expansion. I continued swiping through photos showing the interior of the executive floor, the state-of-the-art research lab, the employee lounge areas designed by a renowned interior architect. "This is from our company holiday party last week," I said, displaying a photo of me giving a speech to hundreds of employees in an elegantly decorated ballroom. "We rented out the plaza. Everyone gets a holiday bonus based on company performance, and this year was exceptional." "The Plaza Hotel," Aunt Judith clarified, her eyes wide. "For a company party?" I nodded. "Our employees work incredibly hard. They deserve to be celebrated." I showed them more photos, each revealing another aspect of my success: the profile of me in Forbes magazine, the industry award ceremony where I had been named Innovator of the Year, the charity foundation I had established to provide technology education to underprivileged girls. "This is my apartment," I said, showing a photo of my penthouse with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "And this is my place in the Hamptons, about 3 miles from the Sullivan estate, actually." I glanced at Emily and Brad, whose expressions had shifted from pity to shock. "You have a house in the Hamptons?" Emily asked, her voice small. "I bought it last summer. 5 bedrooms, private beach access. I do not get to use it as much as I would like because of work, but it's nice for weekends." The room had fallen completely silent now, everyone staring at me or the photos as if seeing me for the first time. In a way, they were. "One last thing," I said, pulling up the final photo. It showed me standing next to a sleek private jet with the Wilson Tech Solutions logo on the tail. "We just leased this for executive travel. Makes the cross-country trips much more efficient." I put my phone down and looked around at my family's stunned faces. No one seemed to know what to say. My father was the first to recover. "Jessica, this is impressive. Why have you never told us about any of this?" The question was so ironic I almost laughed. "I have been trying to tell you for years, Dad. Every holiday, every family dinner, I attempted to share what was happening with my company. But the conversation always shifted to Michael's corporate job or Emily's social life or wedding plans. Surely we would have remembered if you had mentioned owning buildings and private jets," my mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I tried to tell you at dinner tonight about our expansion to the West Coast and the investors I met in Tokyo. I have tried to tell you about major contracts, industry awards, magazine features. I stopped trying so hard after a while because it became clear you were not interested." Michael was staring at me with new eyes. "So when I offered to have Heather help you get an IT job at my company—" "My company is currently valued at just over $50 million, I said quietly. "Last year my personal income was $4.6 million. I appreciate the thought, but I do not need help finding employment." The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. The earlier pity and embarrassment had been replaced by astonishment and, in some cases, what looked like respect. "Why did you not just tell us directly?" my father asked. "Make us understand the scale of what you were doing." "Why should I have had to?" I countered, my voice still calm but firm. "Why was the burden on me to make you see me, to make you hear me? I have been standing right here all along, achieving things I am proud of, building something meaningful. But in this family, unless an achievement fits into your narrow definition of success or comes with a title you recognize, it might as well not exist." My mother had the grace to look ashamed. "We did not realize. We thought you were doing well, of course, but not this well." "Because you never asked," I said simply. "You never Googled my name or the company I mentioned founding. You never followed up when I tried to share news. You just assumed I was doing okay and moved on to celebrating Michael and Emily." Aunt Judith was looking at me with newfound appreciation. "You named the company Wilson Tech Solutions after the family name." I nodded. "Despite everything, I am proud to be a Wilson. I wanted that connection, even if it was not always reciprocated." The irony that they had finally noticed me only after seeing tangible monetary evidence of my success was not lost on me. But I had not revealed all this to shame them, only to finally be seen for who I truly was. "The Tokyo deal I mentioned at dinner closed today," I continued, my voice softening slightly. "It is the largest contract in the company's history. We will be expanding into the Asian market next year, which means a lot more international travel for me. I would have loved to share that excitement with you." My father stood up and approached me, genuine regret in his eyes. "Jessica, I do not know what to say except that I am sorry and incredibly proud. What you have built is extraordinary." For the first time that evening, perhaps for the first time in years, I felt he was truly seeing me. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." My mother remained seated, still processing everything she had learned. Michael looked slightly deflated, his own achievements suddenly seeming smaller in comparison. Emily was whispering something to Brad, who was nodding with new interest in my direction. "The gifts," my mother finally said, her voice strained. "Jessica, about the gifts. It was inexcusable. We can never make that up to you." "It is not about the gifts," I told her gently. "It never was. It was about being valued, being seen as an equal member of this family. The presents were just a physical manifestation of a lifetime of being overlooked." The truth of this statement hung in the air between us, impossible to deny and impossible to fully resolve in a single evening. "Will you stay the night?" my father asked. "We have so much to talk about, so much catching up to do." I considered the invitation, touched by his genuine desire to connect, but also aware that real change would require more than one conversation. "I actually have plans," I said, checking my watch. "Some friends are expecting me, but I would love to have lunch soon, maybe in the city. I could show you the office." My mother looked disappointed but nodded. "Of course, whatever works with your schedule." As I gathered my coat and purse, my family watched with new eyes, as if seeing a stranger in their midst rather than the middle child they had always taken for granted. "Merry Christmas, everyone," I said, standing in the doorway. "It has been illuminating." And with that, I walked out into the snowy night, leaving behind a room full of stunned silence and decades of invisibility. The snow had stopped falling by the time I left my parents' house, leaving the world blanketed in pristine white. Christmas lights twinkled from neighboring homes, and somewhere in the distance I could hear carol singers making their rounds. I sat in my car for a moment, collecting myself before starting the engine. The emotions swirling through me were complex. Vindication, yes, but also a lingering sadness that it had taken such a dramatic revelation to make my family see me. There was a certain freedom in finally unveiling my success, but also disappointment that it had come to this. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back at the house. Through the front window, I could see my family still in the living room, likely discussing what had just happened. My mother was gesturing animatedly, probably already crafting a narrative that would absolve her of responsibility. My father stood with his hands in his pockets, looking thoughtful. Michael appeared to be on his phone, perhaps Googling me or my company for the first time. Part of me wondered if I should have stayed capitalized on this moment of recognition to finally have the heart-to-heart conversations we had never managed to have. But another part, the part that had protected me through years of emotional neglect, knew that real change would require more than one evening of shocked awareness. My phone rang through the car speakers as I turned onto the main road. It was Diane. "So disaster scale of 1 to 10, she asked, without preamble. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. Let's just say I finally showed them exactly who I am and what I have built. "Oh my God, you did it, the big reveal. Tell me everything." As I drove toward the city, I recounted the evening's events to Diane, from the gift exchange oversight to my impromptu slideshow of success. "Their faces," Diane said, laughing. "I wish I could have seen their faces, especially your brother's, Mr. Corporate vice president, suddenly realizing his little sis could buy and sell him several times over." It was not about the money, I said, though I could not deny the satisfaction of that particular aspect. It was about finally being seen, truly seen. "I know, Han, but the money part does make for a satisfying plot twist." We chatted until I reached the outskirts of the city, Diane filling me in on final details of the Tokyo deal and office gossip from the holiday party after I had left. "Everyone's still at Sarah's place if you want to join," she offered. "The night is young and there's plenty of champagne left." Sarah was our chief marketing officer and one of my closest friends. Her annual Christmas gathering for our executive team had become a tradition, a chosen family celebration that contrasted sharply with the tension of my biological family events. "Save me some champagne," I replied. "I will be there in 20 minutes. Sarah's loft in Tribeca was warm with laughter and conversation when I arrived. Christmas music played softly in the background, and the smell of mulled wine filled the air. As I stepped through the door, removing my coat and snow-dusted boots, I was greeted with genuine warmth by people who knew me. Really knew me. "There she is," Sarah exclaimed, rushing over to hug me. "The conquering hero of Tokyo and survivor of family Christmas." The small gathering of my executive team and their partners cheered as Sarah led me to the kitchen island, where an open bottle of Dom Perignon waited. "Toast time," announced Marcus, our chief technology officer, raising his glass. "To Jessica, who built this company from nothing, who sees potential in people and ideas that others overlook, and who never ever settles for less than excellence. We are lucky to be on this journey with you." To Jessica, everyone chorused, clinking glasses. The contrast between this gathering and the one I had just left could not have been more stark. Here my achievements were celebrated without jealousy or qualification. Here I was valued not just for what I had built, but for who I was. Here I belonged. As the evening progressed, I found myself on Sarah's balcony looking out at the city lights with Diane beside me. The air was cold but refreshing after the warmth inside. "You okay?" she asked, bumping my shoulder gently with hers. "For real?" I considered the question carefully. "I think I am. Not because of tonight's revelation, but because I finally understand something I have been struggling with for years." "What's that?" "That I have been looking for validation in the wrong place. My family may never fully see me or understand what I have built. And that is okay because it does not diminish what I have accomplished or who I am." Diane nodded, understanding in her eyes. "The people who matter see you." "Exactly, and I see myself clearly now too. That might be the most important thing." We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city below. New York at Christmas was magical. The lights and energy, a perfect reflection of how I felt inside. Bright, alive, and full of possibility. "What happens next with your family?" Diane finally asked. "I do not know," I admitted. "Maybe this will change things, maybe it will not. I think my father might be genuinely interested in understanding my work now. My mother will probably find a way to take credit for my success somehow." I laughed softly at the thought. But I am not going to waste any more energy trying to make them see me. I will be open to a new relationship if they want one, but I am not going to chase their approval anymore. "Sounds healthy," Diane said approvingly. "Very therapist approved." Speaking of which, Dr. Levine would be so proud of my boundary setting tonight. We both laughed, then headed back inside to rejoin the celebration. The night continued with good food, better conversation, and the kind of genuine connection that had always been lacking in my family gatherings. These people knew about my insecurities and celebrated my strengths. They challenged me when I needed it and supported me unconditionally. This, I realized, was what family was supposed to feel like. By the time I returned to my penthouse in the early hours of the morning, I felt a sense of peace I had not experienced in years. The pain of being overlooked had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something else, something that felt like growth. As I stood by my living room windows looking out at the park and the city beyond, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the overlooked middle child to the CEO of a thriving company, from seeking external validation to finding my own worth, from a family that could not see me to creating connections with people who did. The path had not been easy, but it had been mine. Every challenge, every dismissal, every moment of being underestimated had fueled my determination to succeed on my own terms. In a strange way, I had my family to thank for the resilience that had made my success possible. My phone buzzed with a text message. I expected it to be from Diane or Sarah, but instead it was from my father. "I am truly sorry for years of not seeing you clearly. So proud of what you have built. Would like to understand it better, if you're willing to teach your old dad. No pressure. Love you." The message brought unexpected tears to my eyes. It was simple, sincere, and acknowledged both his failure and my achievement. Perhaps real change was possible after all, at least with him. I did not respond immediately, choosing instead to sit with the feeling. Tomorrow would be time enough for new beginnings or careful boundaries or whatever came next with my family. Tonight was for appreciating how far I had come and the life I had created for myself. The greatest gift I had given myself was not the buildings or the company jet or the beach house. It was the knowledge that my worth did not depend on anyone else's recognition of it. It was the freedom to define success on my own terms. It was the courage to stand in my truth, even when those closest to me could not see it. As the first light of dawn began to illuminate the city, I made a promise to myself. I would continue building, creating, and connecting with people who valued the real me. I would remain open to healthier relationships with my family, but would no longer diminish myself to fit their expectations. And I would remember that the most important recognition was the one I saw in the mirror each morning, a woman who had overcome being overlooked to create something meaningful in the world. Have you ever felt overlooked by the people who should see you most clearly? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of their own worth today. Remember, sometimes the people who fail to see your light are simply not equipped with the right vision. Thank you for watching, and may your holidays be filled with people who truly see and celebrate you.